And at that point, your country is not what it used to be, but you're also not in your country. So you're like, where am I from?
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's a very common immigrant thing, right?
Yeah.
You don't belong to either your home country, neither your home country nor the country you're in. I've personally had experiences where you're like I'm coming back to the U.S. and some immigration official looks at my passport. This was back when I had an Indian passport before I became a U.S. citizen. Look at my Indian passport. Is that a real passport? I'm like, oh, what do you mean? It's got a real visa on it. So that's on the U.S. side. And then once this happened on the Indian side, where the Indian immigration official looks at my passport and says, "Oh, you're Indian. You don't look Indian." I'm like, okay, maybe that's a compliment. I took it as a compliment. But that goes back to your story, right? Yeah. So that, you don't feel in either world, certainly not mentally, right? But I think that also makes immigrants very unique, because you're automatically forced into a space where you're alone, in a sense.
I think it makes you more humble.
It makes you humble, but it also makes you unique in your own mind. You know that you're already unique and you have a unique voice and you have a unique story. Every single immigrant story is very different from every other immigrant. Even though you might be two very close friends who grew up together as childhood friends, went to the same college, same school, and then went to the same university in the US, you'll have very different stories, very different recollections of what experiences you went through, right? So I think, going back to the thing I was saying earlier in our conversation, where I think the goal of going to college, or really the goal of life, is to unearth the unique things about yourself. For immigrants, it comes very, very naturally, because we are already kind of unique and we're already kind of shooting for the stars in a sense, right? There was this very interesting 2 conversations I had back to back a few years ago. This reminds me of it. So these are 2 students. One was a student who grew up in the US. The other was a student who was an immigrant student. Both were undergrads. I was talking to them, and both the conversations had like a very similar, but the outcomes were different. Conversation went something like this. I asked the student, have you thought about grad school? They're like a junior or senior. They're like, oh, no, I don't think I want to go to grad school. This is not my cup of tea. I'm like, do you know what grad school is? They're like, yeah, I don't know. People do research or whatever. I'm like, yeah, have you tried research? They're like, yeah, I've tried research. It's fine. It's okay. But I don't know, you have to pay for grad school. I don't know how that works. I'm like, that, if you go do a PhD, you're going to get a scholarship. This is where the conversations diverge. The student who grew up in the US, their reaction was, yeah, okay, I'm still not interested. And the student who was an immigrant immediately went, whoa, I get a prize for doing something that I want to do? Maybe I want to do. I'm going to try that. How do I apply to grad school? That was the next question that the student asked me. Very different, right? So the immigrant, in my mind, the immigrant is already in very unfamiliar territory where they're reaching for higher goals, and they're already in way outside their comfort zone. And when they see another prize, they're like, okay, I don't know if I like research or not, but it's a prize, so let me go for that, right? And I think those big jumps, those leaps of faith are often sometimes, make a big difference in someone's life, right? Whether it's going for grad school or whether it's founding a company like Google, at least one of Google's co-founders was an immigrant. Same thing is true of a lot of other, startups and companies. We are already way outside our comfort zone, and we have gotten used to being outside our comfort zone, and that makes big leaps of faith just feel normal. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. It's okay.
That's something I experienced. So for some reason, when I moved here in 2016, so beginning of high school, and for some reason something came to my mind. I want to learn English in one day.
Nice.
At that point, I didn't know anything. It was a tough situation. They didn't have a place to live and all these things. And at this point, you might as well fail more, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And then after that, okay, I didn't do it, but so what? 1 week and 1 month, and at 6 months, I was completely fluent.
Yeah.
And then, okay, what's next? Okay, I want to take AP classes. People, oh no, you're just crazy. You cannot do that, or whatever. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm taking AP classes, and okay, what's next? Okay, I'm gonna do research in Fermilab, the particle oscillator.
Yeah.
And then just
do the next big thing.
Yeah. And there's something about in a sense about being immigrant, and just for some reason, there's this thing of always shooting for the stars, because I mean, we're not even from here. We don't.
Yeah.
We fail in many ways,
Right.
and at some point,
Right.
you just don't care anymore, right?
Right.